Hello and welcome to Riverland Women, the podcast which celebrates the amazing achievements and inspiring stories of women across South Australia's Riverland. I'm your host, Kerry Lush from the podcast station. I'm a freelance writer, podcast host and coach, and I'm a former ABC radio broadcaster. Join me each week as we meet some of the extraordinary women who call this region home. This is Riverland Women. From the fast lane to the fig orchard, cancer and beyond. Sue Heward left her corporate life in Melbourne to return to her family's century-old fig orchard at Monash. The last few years have thrown a few curveballs at Sue and her business Singing Magpie Produce, as you'll hear in just a moment. But it's also given her the strength and optimism to take each day as it comes.
Well, I grew up in the Riverland, left for a long time, for 28 years, came back with my family in 2016 to no job here in Monash. So just did the fig harvest with mum and dad. So they have an orchard. Our family orchard is 102 this year, 103 this year. So one day we moved from Melbourne and the next day we started picking figs. And that's that was the start of coming home, really.
What had led to that point that you just decided to change everything up and throw in the city life?
Well, so I did, I think, what a lot of kids did back then, which, you do year 12, you're going to leave, you're going to get out and, go to uni and then never come back kind of thing. But obviously, I think as you get older, you always remember where your roots are. And I always had a inkling to come back here, but my professional career was in health and I sort of travelled the world doing that, and I was in Melbourne for 16 years, so it was definitely our home. I met my partner and then we had Frankie when I was quite old, geriatric in the maternity language at 40, and I think I'd already before that, probably from about 38 or 35, sort of thought, I want to go home sometime. But it's just, you got to find the right partner really and the right time. And so once we had Frankie and was trying to do, work, commute, childcare, not much family support. Mark's family was in Melbourne and in Torquay, but, not close by. So I don't know, it was just time, it was the right time to come. And I probably had enough of being in health. And so it was an opportunity just to come back and have a clean start. I'd always wanted to do stuff in food. That was always an interest. So we took fortunate enough, could take a year off. And I did a year of commercial cookery at TAFE, and did a Cert 4 in commercial cookery. And that just gave me time to think about what I wanted to do. I got back here and mum and dad said, dad in particular said, look, no one does dried figs. Everyone wants dried figs or has asked them for dried figs forever. We don't have time to do it. Why don't you do something with dried figs? So that's literally how it started, really.
So you weren't really looking on the farm as a long-term thing?
Yes, I think I was.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark is not from a farming background, so he did work on the block for a year or so and then said, that's it for me. I'm going to work off farm, which works well for us, really. So, yeah, I think in my mind I always thought I wanted to do something with our orchard. It's got such a strong family history to it, but I just wasn't sure how I would fit it in, how I would fit in, having a professional career in health. How do you become a fig farmer, or, what do you do? So I don't know. We just had to take the leap, and it was a leap, really.
A big change going from working full-time, I presume, in preventative health in the city.
Yeah, I had a really senior job. I was the manager of SunSmart for Victoria. I was the national media representative for SunSmart. So, yeah, it was a big change to come back here, but I was pretty... After I had Frankie, we had, the commute to and from the Cairns Council from our house, and we were in inner north, which meant that we had to go on the freeway. It just was exhausting. That was the tipping point. I loved living in Melbourne. We had a fantastic neighbourhood. It was all wonderful, but yeah, we just knew we were ready for a change.
Did it still take a bit of adjusting though?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, Yes, it was a lot of adjustment. And also for Mark, he hadn't lived in the country. He had done some of his uni actually at a rural university in Victoria, but he hadn't lived in the country before. So, and a big change, he's living right next to his in-laws. So, you know, all totes to him really for making it work.
Yeah, and how about like socially? Was that a big change as well?
Well, we have lots of family here, so that was, you know, really lovely. But yes, we had a very close group of friends in Coburg. And also, you know, we had a young baby, so we had a really good mothers group. So, yeah, that was difficult. But, I mean, probably social media really helped with that in terms of connection.
So how did things progress? So you came back, you did this commercial cookery course, this Cert 4 at the local TAFE, I assume, yeah, and then started getting things happening along the lines of the
It was
figs.
very good doing something like a commercial cookery course, knowing full well at the end of it I needed to make a decision what I was going to do. I was always thinking, all right, am I going to get into catering, or do I want to work at a restaurant, like as a chef or a cook or whatever? And then in the background, also thinking about the opportunities of value adding in terms of mum and dad's block. So, you know, they grow 40 tonne of figs a year, probably 25 to 30 tonne of quinces, 100 tonne of grapes before we pulled some out. So they're flat out on the fresh side of it. So, yeah, I mean, I think the opportunity of going 5 days a week to TAFE and cooking crazily, like crazy amount of practical, really gave me the headspace to go, okay, what can I do? And then at the end of, I think it was that same year in about September, there was a PIRSA had a value added, I'm not sure what it was called now, but it was a course that was run here in Berry, and Mark and I did that together. It was about creating a new business in agriculture or value adding, and that was the time when it's really cemented for me that we could do something with dried figs. It was also the same time when we worked out that Mark and I probably couldn't work together. And it was a very timely learning very early on, so that was good, really, to be honest, to find that early.
What did you find hard working together?
We just work very differently,
yeah.
And I'll get an idea and want to make it happen, like see it through. I'm not someone who doesn't not finish things, whereas Mark would be probably a little bit less risk adverse, and so I think he realised that he's probably more comfortable not to be in small business and to, you know, be in a more or a service sector, which is what he does now. So he's probably found the right job for him, and I worked out that I was happy to take a little bit more risk and just make it happen. And I was probably too impatient for him as well.
So how long ago are we talking now? When did Singing Magpie
Yeah, we started
start?
Singing Magpie in 2017. So in January the 20th was when we opened the online website. So I was always thinking it would be an online offering, but so different now to how I thought. You know, I thought I would be selling bulk 1 kilo bags of semi-sun-dried figs, which we do have 1 kilo bags, but that's not our business at all. We're always going to sell the best that we can produce, so it was always about premium produce, but offer now a whole range of really deluxe gift boxes, really, and hampers. And then we do offer our sun-dried figs, and we also produce sun-dried quince, which no one else produces in Australia. And then we do on-sell peaches, pears, apricots as well, just to provide a full complement of what's on our online shop, and then have quite a substantial wholesale business now from food service and from sort of your high-end delis or cheese shops or bakeries, for example, that want to sell little bags, like 100-gram bags, retail bags of sun-dried fruit. And it's been really interesting because, you know, growing up in the Riverland and also even now in the Riverland, there's a lot of sun-dried fruit, but if you look across Australia, it's really difficult to find Australia-grown sun-dried fruit. So there was a real opportunity, a real gap in the market for us to step in and fill it, really, and that's what we've done.
Have you found it difficult to get into some of those high-end sort of boutiques and sellers, or has it grown organically, or has it all come about?
It's definitely about credibility, and it's definitely about where you place yourself in the market. So I didn't want to see our produce as a commodity. I wanted to see it as a premium product. So that's where we started. And I think that's kind of important. You can't undersell yourself.
Because it would take as much time and effort to produce a lesser product as what it would for your high-end product, I would imagine.
Don't think that we ever have seconds. I'm always looking. If we have a fig that maybe doesn't look as good on the outside but it's still delicious on the inside, it's got to be delicious. My first thought always is, okay, how do we make that into a premium product?
Cover it in chocolate?
Yeah, well, covered in chocolate, that's exactly right. So, and it's not just any chocolate. So we hand temper our chocolate. It's not just like a Cadbury's that you melt in the microwave kind of thing. So it was always about the taste and the offering being beautiful. And also, I suppose it's an opportunity to tell a story about the Riverland and what it's like to grow food in Australia and in the Riverland, because not a lot of people know what that's necessarily like unless you're in it. And to tell maybe a different story about the Riverland, because obviously often the Riverland is seen as, you know, large-scale offerings of citrus or almonds or grapes, you know, all commoditised, whereas I wanted to talk about a story of where we grow the best produce in Australia here. So alongside of that, doing things like entering Delicious Awards and the Sydney Fine Food Awards, really, and winning them and getting gold, and we got a champion award for the sun-dried quince, that really puts you in the spotlight with people who also care about where their food comes from and also want the best that they can find. So that's really helped us in terms of linking, like your question about high end, linking with chefs and businesses who want to sell that.
So that's a lot of extra on top of the food production, though, I would imagine, like applying for those awards and putting yourself out there.
I mean, you definitely, I think, especially with value-added stuff, I think you absolutely have to be able to, it's not just about producing the best. You have to match it with good branding and marketing, and, you know, I'm all over social media because that's what sells my produce. But it also allows me to tell that story as well about what it's like to be here, what to live here, what it's like when it's drought or flood, and what it's like to grow fruit. So I don't think you can just be a farmer. This is my personal opinion, just be a farmer and then find your market afterwards. I think it's got to be hand in hand. Otherwise, you end up with a product that maybe a customer doesn't want or a consumer doesn't want.
I would imagine your previous life in Melbourne as working in the public eye with the Cancer Council, all of that sort of media training and all of that sort of thing would have paid off with what you're doing now.
And I think also leaving the Riverland and coming back and having a different perspective on what is offered here. I just think it's such a beautiful place to visit, and also people work so hard to produce amazing produce that sometimes you get a bit lost when you're just here. You don't realise how good it is until you leave and come back. So just coming back with a different perspective.
Now, so you said almost 6 years ago that you launched Singing Magpie. You've had a few curveballs thrown in there in between, COVID being one.
Yeah, gosh, there was there's sort of been a string of them actually. So first of all, it was probably drought. So that was, you know, I mean, I've grown up in a lot of drought, so it's kind of different. It's confronting to come back when you've got a young child as well and see them run around in dust and whatever, and just worry about when the tank's going to empty and what you're going to do, and, you know, water costs a fortune to water the figs and whatever. So drought was first, and then there was COVID, which was unique for everyone really, around here anyway, or in Australia.
I know a lot of online retail, like clothing stores and that, said they never did better than COVID.
Yes,
how did that go on the food side
us.
of things? Yeah.
Likewise for us. It was absolutely an opportunity. Possibly didn't quite even realise until you were in it how much of an opportunity. So you had to move very quickly. And I think for a small business, that's something that we can do. So we were already set up to sell online, so we could jump on really quickly. So COVID came along, and then I got breast cancer as well. So that was like just another little bit of curveball in 2020, November 2020. Right in the middle, I remember when I first was meant to start chemo was the night in Adelaide. I was in Adelaide, and it was the night when they said, right, there's going to be but from 12 o'clock you can't leave your postcode. I was meant to start chemo the next week, and they said, well, you can stay in Adelaide and start tomorrow. So I can't just start tomorrow. I need to go home. You know, my family doesn't even know what's going on. So that, you know, I just remember being quite confronted by that. And I remember being in the hospital, and one of the nurses, asking me. That's right. Yeah. No, I'm happy to talk about it. She said to me, what's going to happen to Singing Magpie? And I said, oh, look, I don't know. And It was funny. It was a real turning point. That's why I wanted to talk about actually from a business perspective, is that at that time, I really could have just shut down and said, right, the business has got to stop. But instead, I put someone on. So it was a real revelation for me, because I didn't want Sing Magpie to stop, because I needed that to get through cancer. But I just have seen some people shut and look, each to their own. But for me, it really worked to step back, to actually look at the business from the outside in rather than doing everything. Put someone on. Thank God she was amazing and, you know, able to step up and work for us. But it was a real opportunity for us to grow. And so instead of getting smaller through cancer, we got bigger. So we had COVID and cancer, and then we just continue to put more staff on. So yeah, I talk about that from a business bit, because I think the difference for me is I stopped being the packer and started to be the founder and the CEO and the person who stood back and went, okay, from a business point of view, from a planning point of view, where do we need to go next? Yeah, so that was cancer. And then what was after that? Then it was probably the floods in the Riverland. And that didn't affect us directly, because we're in Monash, and, you know, if Monash gets flooded, then possibly the whole of South Australia is going to get flooded, you know. But it was just all the feeder industries and that we support or that we buy from, and the changes around that. And the other thing probably for us is fruit fly as well. Whilst we sun dry our produce and we freeze our produce where we need to so we can manage movement, we don't sell any fresh figs anymore. And that has changed Mum and Dad's business, and it has made me think about in the future what that might mean. So, you know, fruit fly still, I think, really impacts large producers, but I think particularly small producers that may not have the capacity to manage the transport of fruit or whatever. I think it's a huge issue still in the Riverland now.
You mentioned with your cancer treatment, you took that as an opportunity to sort of step outside the business and look in. Have you had other people sort of help you? Have you taken on mentors or, you know, business coaches, that sort of thing to
definitely
keep you going?
There's been different things along the way. I think it's probably the first thing to say is I've been very lucky locally to be able to have people work with me in Sing Magpie who are just fantastic at what they do in terms of actually getting product out there. So they're the first port of call. And once I was able to have enough people help me there, yes, there's people like I work with food consultant Tonya Barr, who's from Straight to the Source, who's guided me the whole way through. But then through Food SA, there's been several different business courses that have helped. And actually the accountant that I work with now is someone I met through Food SA, and he's, you know, really knows about food businesses and value-added businesses in South Australia and Australia, and that's really made a massive difference for us as well. And then, yeah, on the social media side, I've sort of had mentors along the way that have helped tell me what to do, really, because, you know, I don't have an agency who manages our social media. I really firmly believe it's got to stay with us, and otherwise you don't get to see the finger on the pulse, you know, what it is like behind the scenes sort of stuff. But that gets increasingly harder because there's a lot of investment of time, but I think it's something we still need to do now. Yeah, so that's where we're at. So we're still, we're recording here in my house. We still work out of a room in our house. So our next step will be, we do need to expand. I'm just trying to work out how to do that. Like, it's quite amazing. There's quite a lot of support for really big business, but just for littler businesses that just want just a little bit of support to get to the next level, there's not much. It hasn't been much for a few years in Australia, in food manufacturing anyway. So yeah, we do need to grow a little bit, but I'm not looking to, I don't want a massive factory where I take the finger off the pulse in terms of quality. My focus is always going to be on quality and trying to use Riverland produce. Obviously we need to make a profit, but it doesn't need to be.
How does it work in with family life? Your front room is decked out as a storage and packing.
As we've just finished school holidays, there's definitely a juggle through school holidays. But yeah, we just have times, Frankie and Mark go to school and work the times that we're at Sing Magpie, so there's a bit of a changeover in there. But yeah, we're able to have a dedicated space at the front of the house, and all our cool rooms and all that sort of stuff are down on the plant with, part of Mum and Dad's property. So it is a juggle, but I think they're probably used to it. It's probably me who's at that point now where I want to separate it.
Yeah.
Have that. I want to be able to go leave the house and go to my office. Well, it's not ever going to be an office, but it's going to be, a commercial space somewhere. Yeah, so I'm probably ready for that.
Do you have a 1 year, 5 year, 10-year plan ahead?
Look, it's funny. People ask me that, but I think once you've had cancer, I feel like your life expectations change. So I don't put those pressures on myself. I do want to be able to grow and expand, but to a point that's manageable, so it's still about quality, and that it's not about a lot of debt. I don't want a lot of debt. I'm 53 and had cancer. I don't need to worry about a stupid massive loan. So no, I don't really have those plans in place, to be honest, because but the reality of cancer is it can come back and you just have to manage it. And if you manage it well and you manage it early, and if you're lucky enough, and there is luck involved in there, it becomes a chronic disease. So that's more how things are focused around that, really. So, and I feel very lucky that I've got a career like Singing Magpie that offers that opportunity to be an entrepreneur and creative, really creative. You can just, I've just had a call from a large business today who want gift boxes for 100 plus staff. So we can sit here and design their boxes for them. And, I find that fantastic that I can just have that creativity, still make enough money that we can live. And, it's really enjoyable. And I don't think everyone has that in their career or their jobs. So I feel very lucky for that. That's enough, really.
So has cancer really cemented that thought for you? Is that,
has
that changed your mindset?
I think you just suddenly realise that life's too short, and you just have to take each day as it comes. Even though sometimes I get ahead of myself, and then I'm like, no, you just get back to it, like one day at a time. And it's a privilege. Life's a privilege. I think people sometimes maybe forget that, but it changes my way of doing business. And I always, I get a bit of pressure every now and then to export and to grow really big, take a massive loan, get a massive grant. I don't want any of that. I want a small grant to get to the next level, and I want it to be quite measured. And sometimes people don't like that. They want you to be bigger than what you are. And we could be, but why would I do that at this point? This works for us, and I still get to, have 3 or 4 team members, all from the Riverland, support 3 or 4 other local producers, buy my boxes from Vizzy. I love it. Yeah, just a great little niche opportunity here in the Riverland. And I think if I can do it, anyone else can do it. That's the other thing. You can't. So I've had people ask me, well, look, can you actually make money? And I said, well, it does take quite a few years before you get a profit. That's the reality. So I was lucky, I had some money saved behind me to get to that point. But if you're committed to it, yes, you can make small business work for you in a small rural area. But you have to stick to your vision and your commitments and not get swayed by...
Is it hard to think all the things you could do, and you look at that?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's been temptations of...
Or what other people are doing.
Can you build this massive factory and do freeze drying in the Riverland? I'm like, well, no, actually. I'd love if there was a freeze drying business in the Riverland that I could take our fruit to. Or someone else wanted me to be a large-scale dehydrator. I'm like, actually, I don't want to be a large-scale food manufacturer. What we do really well. We've only got a limited number of figs. So, we sell out every year. And even with trying to increase the number of figs that we dry, and that's a really nice place to be. And yeah, there is pressure to take on more things. And also, the flip of that, I've had a fair bit of criticism that my product's too expensive, but this, gosh, that's a lot for dried fruit. But, we take and that criticism actually is more locally than anywhere else. If most of my customers are from other states, but that's because we take a lot of care. So we buy the best that we can find in the Riverland, and then we sort it. And that's why those gift boxes are just beautiful, because they're the best fruit I can grow or I can find here. And I'm proud that I can work with local producers to get that story out there. We have the best apricots, peaches, pears, jubes, plums sometimes, some nectarines sometimes, from growers all around that go with our black and white figs and our quinces and some of our citrus, some other people's citrus, from Almond Co's almonds, And then I find, I could go really high end with the chocolate, but I mean, that would take it off the scale in terms of a price point. But also, it's about match. The hero in our gift boxes is the dried fruit from the Riverland. So the chocolate just, adds the...
You don't want it to be too good to overtake it.
It adds the topping on top. But, the fruit is the hero, and that's what I always want it to be.
So life back in Monash, it's been a good move?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we really loved Melbourne, but this has been lovely in terms of managing, but I can pick Frankie up from school. There's not this huge commute on the freeway. It's such a lovely place to live. I have to admit, we don't actually go to the river that much to swim, but we do go to the pool or to the lake, depending on if there's not too many carp or whatever. But you know what I mean? Like, there's just it's lovely living in the country. I wouldn't live back in the city again after being here. And
you've got your mum and dad not far down the road, and in their sort of later years as well. I guess that's important.
I feel very lucky that we can be here, so that one, I can spend time with mum and dad, but also Frankie grows up with her grandparents and her cousins, and like I said, we do have family in Melbourne, but it was just that bit further away, and because traffic's so bad, it's not like you can just pop over there. It's a whole day activity. So yeah, I feel lucky that we're here.
How have your parents found it, coming home and stepping into the business after perhaps not being involved for so many years?
They were very surprised that I came back, even though I always had sort of talked about it. I don't think they ever thought that we would. And then I think they are continually surprised the things that we create. Chocolate bars with figs on there, and the chocolate enrobing, and then the gift boxes, and now I've just, like I said, spent 3 weeks confitting clementines. They're always like, oh my God, what's she going to think of next? But you know what? If I think about it, I think about Dad. He was very similar. He would, not so much on value adding, but on growing different things. He's always tried to grow different, have a point of difference. And I think probably some of that's rubbed off on me, really. And Mum comes in and just, she's the kind of person who makes it happen, really. She'll sit there and we're like, let's try and work out how we can sun dry the quince. And really it was her recipe that we finessed in the end. So, I think it's lovely that we've been able to do that together, really.
Cancer-wise, all clear, touch wood at the moment, everything all good?
Yeah, so cancer-free, and that's the best that you can hope for, really. It is what it is. It may come back. I was lucky it hadn't sort of moved to anywhere else, but I don't know, you just have to do what you can do. I suppose there's some lucky sides to cancer in that, it did give me that opportunity to look outside of the business and look in and see where my best expertise is. And, I had breast cancer. So breast cancer, in terms of treatment, there's always new drugs. I'm very lucky. Some other rare cancers, it's quite different. So, if there's got to be a sunny side to it.
It's a good way of looking at it.
Well, there's no other way. I mean, I think really with cancer, being positive is really very important. Like, I didn't quite realise until you're in it that you've just got to keep your head above water and think where you're moving rather than getting stuck. Because otherwise you can go down a rabbit hole of it being terrifying, but you can't really do that. So
how did you keep yourself positive? What did your treatment entail?
Well, I think that seeing magpie kept me positive, It absolutely kept me driven, and especially in the early, because, I got diagnosed in late October, early November, and we already had our Christmas orders half in. So I couldn't stop. And it actually changed my treatment. Like, I remember talking to the oncologist. He said, well, you'll have 5 months of chemo and then you'll have surgery. So it does depend on where your cancer and what it is to how the regime works. But for me, it was chemo first. And within that 5 months, it was like 3 months of weekly chemo. That isn't as bad. And then there's 2 months of, it's called the Red Devil. It's quite hardcore, but that was every fortnight. So we had 1 to 12 that we stuck on the fridge, and we just cross it off, and it just had to be very driven and focused by, all right, we've done that. I think so that you don't you just can't get into the what ifs too much. And I feel like my cancer team were amazing, and obviously had done it many times before, that they just help you stay focused so that you don't think too much about, oh, what's next. Oh, you are thinking about what next, but you got to take it as you come, really. So get through chemo, then I had surgery. I had 2 lots of surgery, small surgery, luckily, so my recovery wasn't too bad, and then it was like 6 weeks of radiotherapy. And radiotherapy for me I handled it quite well, but the most difficult bit about radiotherapy was that you had to be in Adelaide. So you can't have that here, and it's daily, so it's not like you could commute. But, and that was hard with Frankie in particular. Anyway, you just do what you have to do, really. And back here, things like people would drop off food. If you've got someone in your family or friends that have got cancer, I can't tell you enough dropping off food made a massive difference. It just took the pressure off everyone. It meant that you weren't just having junk food for dinner. And, my brother would come and look after the chooks, and Mum... Mum was an absolute trooper. She came with me every week to chemo, and, I can't ever... That was just an amazing effort. So I had chemo in Adelaide so that I could have cold caps, which helps you keep your hair. And initially that was important with me, but as you go along, you realise it's not that bad. But it is for everyone else, because it's a real sign that you're quite sick. And I was lucky. I just kept my hair really until the last month, and then we shaved it off. But sorry.
No.
Anyway, obviously cancer is a very traumatic thing to have, but I feel like we were able to. You just get through it, and so many people have cancer that's the reality. You just have to deal with it. I suppose one thing that surprised me about cancer was there were some people that are so scared of cancer that they kind of just leave your life. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. I was quite confronted by that, but it's very common. I think people just can't handle it. Either they can't handle you dying, or someone else in their life has died. And but on the other side of it, there's other people that come back into your life that are amazingly supportive. So, I just don't think you can hide it. There's just so many people that get cancer that we just have to deal with it a little bit better from a supportive network point of view, because you need that. I got off track. One of the things about all of the surgeons, all of my oncologists said, you have to stay positive. Like, the research shows the more positive you are, the better results you get. So, I would implore anyone that if there's somewhere that they can keep themselves happy, they need to do it. And for me, Sing Magpie made me happy. So that's why we didn't retreat, really. It was sort of conscious, but it wasn't conscious. And it wasn't until about 2 months in that we realised, oh shit, sales are going great and everything's going great. We're working it out. And I'm like, well, why would I stop? This is keeping me going. And I was quite public about my story, because I just didn't really feel like there was any other way to do it. The Riverland's a small place and everyone's going to find out, so you might as well talk about it, otherwise people will talk about it anyway. So I know that's a bit of media training, never leave a vacuum, always just fill it with what you want to tell people, rather than people making up stories about you. So, but that worked for us. Obviously people got behind me, and actually lots of my customers were people that had cancer as well. So but I think that's the reality of small businesses. If you can't hide, there's good and bad things, and you've just got to tell your story as much as you'll feel comfortable to tell it. So, yeah.
We've talked all through this about Singing Magpie.
Yeah.
Is there an actual singing magpie? Like a single singing magpie that...
No, there's plenty. Each
there's
year
not
there's
some
new
pet
ones.
one.
No, each year there's new ones out here with babies. So there's not just one. Although I did have this is funny or not funny. I don't know how you take it, but we had this metal magpie on the driveway. We don't have a sign because we don't have sales from here just because we work out of our house. But we had a sign down there, and obviously it's in Collingwood colours or Port Adelaide, depending on who you support. And when someone stole the bloody magpie off the post. Anyway, I thought, oh, well, they can have that. I'll find another one.
That's Sue Heward from Singing Magpie Produce at Monash. And you can find Sue and Singing Magpie on Instagram and Facebook. And you can also follow this podcast on the same platforms. I'd love it if you could subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for listening to Riverland Women.